Venga, a ver si a mí también me transmites un poco. Que estoy...
Oye, lleváis el vodka ahí, ¿no? Vale.
Sí. No. Hi, good afternoon, and welcome again to the Spain Pavilion. We have been celebrating today the Day of Water and Oceans. We had several events, very interesting events, dealing with all kind of issues related with water and climate change, either with technologies, oceans, adaptation, the coast, the impact, how to work with the impact in coastal zones. And this is almost the last one event we have today. We know that there is something very interesting happening in Paseo de la Castellana today at that time, but still we consider that this discussion will be even more interesting than than what happens there. And this is very important and very relevant. We know that you just had something similar in the green zone, but this is our pleasure to receive you here. We had this morning Ambassador Thompson here, and it's my pleasure to have Sonia here. She's the responsible of the green zone. So then we can listen what you just said, but improved. So thank you very much, and please, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. Well, good afternoon, everybody, and thank you for being here with us today. We will have a conversation. It's 6 o'clock. You have had a long day, so let's talk about the ocean. And for talking about the ocean, we have great speakers in the round table. With us is Mr. Peter Thompson, United Nations Secretary General's Special Envoy for the Ocean. I want to say it right. Itziar Martin, Deputy Director for the Protection of the Sea in the Ministry for Ecological Transition. Hello, Itziar. Rafael González Quirós, the Science Deputy Director of the Spanish Institute of Oceanography, and Cristian Laborda, Consultant on Oceans for Latin American countries. Let's not forget that today we are in COP25, Chile, Madrid. So we want to have Latin American flavor in everything we do. So it's a rich content. Before just giving the floor to the speakers, just 5 seconds of silence to understand why we are talking about the ocean. In these 5 seconds, what have we done? We just breathe. So maybe just for that reason, breathing, it is important and interesting to talk how do we protect our blue planet. By the way, I never understand why it is called Earth, planet Earth, because it should be called planet Ocean. 2/3 of the ocean of the planet's surface is ocean. So with no further ado, I will just shoot the first question to all of you. This is same to all of you. You come from very, very different backgrounds. So from your professional experience and field of work, which are the main challenges faced by the ocean in relation to climate change? So the floor is yours.
Go on.
You know, looking at the crowd, we should have served wine here, you know, and like everybody else is. This is why they're getting that bit noisy out there. Anyway, we'll get our wine before the night is out, don't worry. But looking at the people that are here, I know many of you have heard me speak today, so I'll try and speak about something different. You know, I've been saying, just because of what a journalist asked me earlier today, he said, you know, how do you expect all these changes that you're calling for to happen? Don't you realize that we're selfish people? And my response was, well, actually, that will be your driver, the fact that you're selfish. I'm selfish. I'm selfish about my grandchildren's future, right? That's why I work as hard as I do. I care about my kin. It's a very selfish thing. And so it's more that than altruism which drives me, I have to say. So when I was thinking about that afterwards and thinking, yeah, a bit of a hard bastard nowadays, Thompson, and I was thinking, actually, that's not all true. I'm a fifth generation Fijian. My great-great-grandfather arrived in Fiji in the days of sail. I'm proud of that because of what, of course, shipping has done to the world since in pollution, getting us places fast and everything. But, we settled that part of the world as the Polynesians and Melanesians did before us under the power of sail. And I wish we could go back to that. When I was a kid growing up in Fiji, just about as soon as you could walk, you started swimming. And we didn't have much money and there wasn't that much equipment in those days, but as soon as you got a mask and you started to swim out amongst the coral, because our islands in Fiji, there's 300 of them, every island is surrounded by a coral reef. And a large part of the coast is also mangrove, so that was our other playground. The reef and the mangrove were our two playgrounds as kids. As soon as you got that mask on and you started swimming in those coral reefs, it's like going in a magnificent forest because you're going down little lanes in the reef. You've got to picture small kids, right? We weren't going out scuba diving or something. We just had masks and we're exploring through the reef. And you're going past 1 million different types of life forms in about 5 to 10 minutes. I mean, it was just dazzling what a live reef looked like in those days. And then you come to the edge of the reef and you look down into the blue abyss and you imagine everything with a sort of sense of fear or of the size of everything. But when you got home to bed that night and you were lying there, you were just so full of bliss about what a joy it was to be a human being on planet Earth. You really looked forward to life on this planet, that there was so much beauty just at your front door. Imagine what the rest of the world is like. There must be so much beauty and wonder out there. And the reason I'm telling you that story is, if you go back to those mangroves where we played in our tin boats, the mangroves are all just now been reclaimed for urban development, and the reefs are all dead because of pollution from the city, but also because of ocean warming and acidification, all the other things. And all that beautiful life is gone, It's just kind of rubble out there now. And to think that we lost that, right? Now, we've still got it in places, Fiji in particular. We're one of the lucky, resilient areas in the world where coral reefs, there are parts of Fiji where there are beautiful, vibrant coral reefs. We have to protect what we've got. When it comes to mangroves, we've got to restore it. We can replant mangroves. We've lost, we're losing 7% a year at the moment still of those blue carbon things like seagrass and mangroves and so on. We can restore it. We have to wake up. You all heard me this morning about why it's so urgent. And I was just echoing Antonio Guterres' words, and I'll finish on that, which is, Guterres in his opening of the Blue COP this week said that humanity is knowingly destroying the life support systems of this planet, right? Not Greenpeace, not WWF, not me, Antonio Guterres, the leader of the United Nations. Humanity is knowingly destroying the life support systems of this planet.
Thank you, Peter.
Wow. After that, this morning we had more or less this session in the green zone with the social society, and it was really enrichment. There was a colleague coming from Tonga, and he made us all with big applause because he explained that please think of the small countries in the Pacific. We are suffering if the ice melts. We are going to sink. So we have to realize that there are places in our planet that are going to suffer more. Okay, so we have to make an effort and think on them. For us in Spain, it is not going to be easy either. We are going to suffer also as everybody these challenges for the ocean, the global warming, the increase in the height of the sea that is going to affect us. In the Canary Islands, probably it will be 1 meter. in the Mediterranean, it depends on what we can agree here and what we can do, but it will be 70 centimeters. Mar Menor is going to be under the water. There are places that are going to suffer a lot. In Spain, we have in the last decades, we have suffered a process of people going to live to the coast, not only for holidays, but for living every day. 60% of the Spanish population live close to the shore. So they are going to suffer a lot too. And we have to be able to face all these challenges together. So from the science point of view, please.
Well, after listening to Peter, the problem from the scientific point of view, the problem with your story would be that what we need is data in order to implement management decisions for the future. And in that story, there's no data. It's just what he has observed for many years, but we need to get data from the ocean. The problem is that, as I said in the morning, we're a terrestrial organism. We are adapted very well to understand what happens in the terrestrial ecosystems, but when we dive into water, we start having problems to see appropriately, to listen appropriately, and most of our senses are not adapted to observe and to understand what's going on in the ocean. I mean, our ancestors 10,000 years ago developed agriculture, and to do so, they have to have a knowledge about seeds, the cycles of the vegetables, the seasonal cycle events that were going on. We have understood those cycles very recently, much into the 20th century. So we really need to make a big effort to monitor the ocean, to get data from the ocean, to observe the ocean in a much better way than we are doing now, and from there base solid science in order to take decisions. Nowadays, it's approximately 70% of the data that we get from the ocean come from short-term research projects that are focused on very specific hypotheses that maybe are only focused in a very small area of the ocean. And we need to have a good coverage, identify the critical zones we need to observe, and also, what is very important, the scales that are more critical for each process that we need to observe. So in that sense, there's many, I mean, the ocean, the predictive models that the IPCC is using, for instance, they have a good understanding. I mean, the large-scale currents are already in those, appropriately incorporated in those models, but the mesoscale, for instance, is not yet incorporated. And recent papers say that about 50% of the heat exchange between the ocean and the atmosphere is related to those mesoscale processes that are also very important for the fisheries recruitment and so on. So we have to change this paradigm, the way we observe the oceans, and the governments need to understand that we need to have sustained observing systems covering not only physical oceanography, but to the top to biological components and even human activities in the ocean. Thanks.
Thank you, Rafa. Christian, what do you think about this?
Well, of course, first of all, quiero decirle hola a todos. I am very honored to be here with you, and with your indulgence, I want to say that it's a really honor because probably I'm the only Chilean Spaniard, because I am Chilean, I am Spaniard as well from my family, and I am a little bit of fruit of the international cooperation, because my grandfather arrived to Chile because the Winnipeg vessels, after the civil war here in Spain, poet Neruda, bring 2,500 Spaniards to Chile, and it was international cooperation for human purposes. And in Latin America, we are again, as you know, in a crisis, in a social crisis, and particularly in Chile as well. But as we have been doing in the past, we need to work together and to try to sort out our issues, and respect each other and move forward for the future generations. And the crisis is not only social, it's global, and it's climate change, and it's ocean as well. As we discussed in the morning, Latin America has these many issues, but the idea of trying to put in a balance the economic growth being developing countries, at the same time, to create new MPAs, real MPAs. We talked in the morning about that as well. So, for Chile, very well, ocean is in everywhere, but at the same time has been very difficult to contaminate, in the good sense, people to understand that we need to take action, because during all this week you could see how the things are going in coastal zones, in loss of biodiversity, in the lack, the huge issue of oxygen in the ocean. So we know very well the challenge, but MPAs, I believe, as another elements or tools, are creating opportunities in Latin America. And from Mexico, Panama, just yesterday create a new MPA, passing for Colombia, Costa Rica. Chile itself has 42% of the EEZ protected. Of course, everyone is working to try to not only to fully protect, but to have standards to move forward to manage. So as I said, going back to the ocean and climate change, this is an issue that you will be not sorting out in an insulated position or view. We need to work with science, with policymakers, but particularly, was mentioned today, with communities. Communities are key to face, together this issue. So this is my view.
Thank you. Peter, which are UN priorities regarding ocean and climate change?
UN priorities. First of all, it's fabulous to hear that Pablo Neruda did that. I didn't know that. I often read that Pablo Neruda poem at speeches. I need the sea because it teaches me. It's the great poem about the ocean. So nice that we'd have to talk about that. UN priorities. UN priorities. I think that when we talk about the UN, we're talking about all of us, right? 193 governments, and we have set a plan in place, which is the Paris Climate Agreement. We've put in place the Sustainable Development Goals. That's the plan. Mm-hmm. Take that plan, implement it, and we will solve the problems that we are facing.
So easy. So it's easy.
Part of it are. If you take SDG 14, people are so worried about pollution, as they rightly should be, pollution in all its forms, and they're so worried about fishing. Overfishing, subsidies, etc., etc. But as far as I'm concerned, those two things are actually eminently fixable. And I believe we can do it by 2030 if we stick to the plan. Mm-hmm. SDG 14, have a look at 14.2, have a look at 14.4. These targets are achievable. 14.6 on subsidies and so on. So stick to the plan and we'll be okay. So what is the UN then doing, having set a plan in place to make sure that that plan is being implemented? As far as the ocean is concerned, it's the UN Ocean Conference system. We had one in 2017, second one in Lisbon, as you know, 2nd to the 6th of June next year. And this is to hold the world's feet to the fire, to make sure that we're being faithful in our implementation of SDG 14. We didn't just make a nice pile of words, it actually means something. And I believe it is making a change in ocean, certainly in ocean action. Are we winning? No, we're not. But we know we're in a war now. At least we're aware that we've got this war on. Also the UN, of course, you've heard about the UN Decade for Ocean Science, and these are the doctors. The ocean is sick, we're going to go to the doctor, we're going to the scientists. We're giving them 10 years to tell us what's wrong with us. When I say us, I mean the ocean. So that's what the UN is doing, and don't forget the other two big meetings of next year. Apart from the UN Ocean Conference, UN has got the biodiversity COP in Kunming, and it has got the Glasgow COP of UNFCCC in December, which is where we come with our raised NDCs. Take all those three together, never separate them, never think, oh, I'm just looking after climate. No, climate, biodiversity, and the ocean is what everybody has woken up to. It's one thing, and we've got to solve it next year, because that's our super year. That's the beginning of the decade, which people tell us is the last decade we've got to make a new deal with nature.
Do you think we will have a treaty next year for open sea?
Sorry?
How do you call it?
BBNJ.
Yeah, I mean, obviously I didn't mention a lot of things in that what's happening next year. The BBNJ hopefully will conclude next year with a sensible agreement between member states for the high seas. You've got the IUCN Ministerial Congress, only happens once every 4 years. It's in Marseille next year. That's really important. There's a nature summit being held at the United Nations in September. But the three big ones for me are what ties ocean in Lisbon to biodiversity in Kunming to climate in Glasgow. Get those three right, and at the end of the year I think we'll have a good recipe for success. If we don't get it right, we might as well put up the surrender flag.
Okay, excellent. Itziar, how are we doing in Spain? Are we doing good? Are we doing great?
In
Are we doing
Spain,
bad?
people who work on the protection of the marine environment for years, we are now really happy somehow, because the oceans are going to the front row. To the front row here in the climate change, but also to the front row when you have lunch in the family and you talk about marine leader. I mean, the people are getting aware of how important it is and how it is now that we have to do things. So next year is going to be the year. We are going to take advantage of that for sure. And here in Spain, you know that Europe makes a lot of legislation, so we have to follow them in the large scale. We have the marine strategies, that is the environmental planning of the marine space, the marine spatial planning that puts the environment and the uses and everything in there in order. We will have to have plans in March 2021 for the whole marine waters. It means 1 million square kilometers. We have Spain, the terrestrial part of Spain, it is 500,000, so the double in waters. We have to have everything in order in 2021. And if you go to the small scale, we have what brings us here today, that is the MPAs. So for the MPAs, what we use always are two principles. One is the precautionary approach, the precautionary principle, and the other is the ecosystem approach. So the first thing is to be sure that the human activities taking place on site do not put in danger the habitats and the species that are there. And then we have to open our ways of seeing things, so it is not only the ecological, it is also the social and also the economics. We have to take everybody on board. Of course, always with the science as the main tool we have. We have to take advantage of the best available science possible, and participation. We need to get everybody on board. Not only civil society, but also the sectors, fishermen working there, traditional people who live from the sea, who enjoy the sea, who are there. It's something, if we don't want paper parks, and we don't want them, we have to make a huge effort and bring everybody on board. So to design them from bottom up, and then we will hopefully be able to put them in place and to do the management better. But it has to be done from the beginning. Thank you.
Thank you. And Christian, how are we doing in Latin America?
Well, I think that, as I mentioned before, Latin America is moving regarding MPAs, but now those countries that have created recently, they are working very seriously in implementation. And as climate change is the same issue, finance is really, really important and involving the well-known blue economy. I mean, we need business people, we need innovation, we need intelligence and cooperation. And the good thing is that technology is bringing now tools that are affordable. If you go 5 years ago or 10 years ago, it was really, really difficult and expensive to obtain satellite information and other things. The other element that I believe that is important only for Latin America and that we need to see from different point of view when you are dealing with coastal zone or coastal MPAs, for instance, and large scale and oceanic MPAs that are connected to the high seas, which at the same way it will be very important BB&J for this reason. There are ecologically connections and of course the principle of compatibility between the work that has been carried out by coastal states and the high seas. But as I said, all this is technical. The important thing is that, as it has been mentioned, citizens are complaining about accountability, and MPAs cannot be a way of accountability. So effort need to be serious, need to be science-based, and I think that this is what Costa Rica is doing, for instance, now Panama and many other countries.
Thank you very much. And Rafa, what do you think are the challenges that you face as a scientist regarding climate change?
Well, as I mentioned this morning, there's two sides of the same coin, which is the effects, how the ocean affects climate change. As I said, it has absorbed 90% of the excess of heat provoked by greenhouse gases already, so it plays a fundamental role in the process. And also we need to understand the effects of climate change on the ocean. So on the first side, on the first issue, I already mentioned this thing about the mesoscale. Of course, there's many other issues, but I think that's an important one, to look at the small scales of variability, which are probably playing a big role on the regulation of the climate. On the other hand, I think that the complexity of the ocean is a moving fluid, and it's very difficult to analyze and to do sustained and repeated measurements. So, but for the physical oceanography, I think that the modeling of the physics of the current has advanced very much in the last 2 decades. But for the ecosystems and the networks of organisms, we are yet in a process that we need to understand them much better in order to take predictions. And so I think that for the future ahead, although we can predict that some species are going to move according to the latitude because of the global warming, we will still have to rely on observations in order to take decisions. But we have to combine science and observations for decision making for the future. I think the main challenge is to observe the biological components or a major challenge is to observe biological components of the oceans. There are promising techniques like environmental DNA and image analysis and so on, but there's yet to be developed appropriately for at least for management.
Sure. We have this huge amount of water in this beautiful blue planet, and at the same time we have this tiny fraction or percentage of marine protected areas. This is a question for you, which are the role that MPAs, marine protected areas, plays in this scenario of climate change? Because we are talking about a tiny fraction, even though we can be happy because, okay, we had to achieve 10% for 2020, in Spain we're in the 12%, so we are very happy, but it's really a tiny percentage.
You think about MPA is where they sit in the whole climate change thing. Okay, first of all, no healthy planetary ecosystem without a healthy ocean ecosystem, right? And then how do you get a healthy ocean ecosystem? How do we restore it? Obviously, we've got to get into the marine spatial planning that you were talking about. You know, if you have the privilege of having an EEZ, make sure it's properly marine spatial planned, you know, and make sure you know what's going on in your EEZ and you have laws covering what's going on there. So people can't just come and pollute or overfish or drill for oil or set off seismic guns, hopefully nowhere, but at least only in these particular zones. Just as we do on land, 100% planning. Same thing for our EEZ. That should be a responsibility of every country that's got an EEZ. I think Spain's already done it. Vanuatu, our neighbor, has already done it. Fiji is committed to doing it soon. So when you have a marine spatial plan, think of the MPA as the absolute heart of any marine spatial planning, right? That's the reserve in your MSP. So that's where MPAs sit in the whole sort of global context of the thing. Look, this is probably the last time I get a chance to speak in this room because I have another thing that I have to go to, but I didn't want this moment to pass with Spain and Chile both being here to say it's incredible what you guys have pulled off. You know, we were all heading off to Santiago, we had all those plans, but my God, you've done an amazing thing. So I really want to thank Spain and Chile for pulling this off, for making the blue COP, which we've been talking about for so long, but actually to make the blue COP happen. This is a blue COP. We've got a text working its way through plenary. I'm hearing good things about results. We've been working on this ocean text for a while. So that will hopefully be one of the important documents adopted by the plenary. But just look around. Everything here is about ocean, right? There are hundreds of events on. So congratulations. You know, you guys have just done such a fantastic job. I'll finish on one point because you know, my wife always says that I make the apocalypse speech all the time. It's not true, you know. I'm a grandfather and I'm fighting for my grandchildren's welfare here. When people ask me if I'm an optimist or a pessimist, that is not the question. The question is, what are you doing? You know, as an individual, or as a government, or as a community, what are you doing? You know, we've got this big problem. You can't just sit back. What are you doing? So pragmatism, not optimism or pessimism, pragmatism is the thing. And human beings, when faced with crisis, have always been pragmatists. You think back to our movement from the Stone Age to the Space Age. We had two innate qualities which got us through crises. And that was the quality of innovation and better sharing. Those are the two qualities. You know, you think about societies. They are, you know, how we moved to the growth of agriculture and, you know, developing rockets and all the rest. That was all about sharing of ideas and sharing of skills, and that's what society is based on, that social contract. And then innovation, you know, humanity's amazing ability to innovate. You know, you're faced with a plague, you develop a vaccine, you know. So we've done that all through our history. So why, when faced with our greatest crisis ever as a species, the climate crisis and the ocean crisis, why would we not bring our great skills of innovation and hope into play in a way they've been never done at such a scale? You know? And crises are the times, you know, warfare and so on, when we innovate and when we share better. So I'm full of hope that, you know, Homo sapiens will find a way to repair the damage that we've done and that we give our grandchildren a healthy place. But as again, you know, thanks so much for what you've done in Spain and Chile. Yeah. I gotta go. Meeting's up here down. Excuse me.
Hi, Peter. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here. We keep the same question. MPAs, maybe with a Latin American approach, a Spanish approach, and scientific approach. Why those MPAs? Why MPAs are so important? Why should we care about MPAs?
Well, obviously, everyone, I think, is fully aware what is going on regarding climate change and what is happening with acidification the loss of biodiversity. So the question is, MPAs will sort out the whole issue? It's impossible, but certainly it's a good tool if the MPA has, as an objective, the conservation. That, by the way, is not something that people that we are working in environment we are coming from the heart saying, oh, conservation need to be done. No. There are more than 168 countries that are obligated under UNCLOS, the Law of the Sea Convention, to protect and preserve the ocean. So it's already an obligation. The matter is that it has been not yet fully implemented. So, and this is connected to leadership. I mean, as a citizen, everyone is able to compel the politicians to do their job, to comply with these obligations. And as I said, MPAs were, during a long time, has been seen as a tool that is against fisheries, and it's not the case. Actually, it's very well known in the literature that actually are helping fisheries. But of course, they need to be well managed, as has been pointed out here. So to me, I think that MPAs is a reflection of the balance between conservation and sustainable use. And as you mentioned, only 6-7% of the ocean is protected so far. So it means that the other large part is unprotected, and is with no any measure to conserve or sustainable use of this part of the ocean. So I think we need to work together. It's very important. International cooperation, as you mentioned, coming year is the super year. It's important to remark why, because it's CBD new targets. I mean, and many countries, including Costa Rica, the UK, and others are, taking into account what IUC has said, that we need 30% of the ocean protected. It means EEZ and high seas as well. Then we have, this year again, CAMELAR failed to carry on creating the network of MPAs after the Ross Sea. So BBNJ, important treaty, and subsidies is very well documented that without subsidies, part of the large international fleet that is operating now will not have economic value. So, and some of those subsidies at the end are contributing to the IUU fishing. So this is something that we need to keep in mind as a message to take home, that this is not a matter that can be sorted out only one country, one organization. We need all people on board, and there is a real sense of urgency here. It's not just talking about, it's real sense of urgency that we need to address.
Rafa, a message from the science.
Yeah, from the scientific point of view, the marine protected areas are fundamental for one main reason, which is that they help to have well-structured ecosystems that we know that are more resilient to perturbations, and climate change is the major perturbation we're going to face into the future. So they will help to preserve certain areas with well-structured ecosystems that will benefit also the areas around and surrounding. There's also another issue, that there is certain habitats like mangroves or seagrasses accumulate a very large amount of carbon. They are storing a lot of carbon, so if we don't preserve those, we are going to release more carbon into the atmosphere. So that's another important issue. And the third thing that I would like to mention is that when we implement a marine protected area, we set up a new legal framework that allows us to implement new ways of managing the ocean. It allows us to implement measurements, regulations of fisheries different from the regulations outside the marine protected areas, that probably I understand those as a laboratory to implement new ways of managing the ocean, because as Itziar mentioned this morning, we cannot keep doing business as usual. We have to change the way we manage the ocean. And it's not a matter about your question in the beginning of having a 10% or a 20%. What we really have to do is to manage the ocean differently, and I think MPAs are an opportunity to do that.
Here, as a policymaker.
Yeah, I think I cannot say many more than has been said. So MPAs make the marine environment more resilient. The habitats, the species being there, have the opportunity to be bigger, to be in a better way, so they can resist better what is coming. So any death, any possibility of storms and climate and so, they affect them less. And so these big animals are able to reproduce and to spread further the borders of the MPAs, because there are no borders in the sea. So this reserve effect is good for what is close to the reserve and sometimes far away. So only for that it will be worth it. But it gives us the opportunity to have a laboratory to see what happens without main pressures, and it gives us also the opportunity to revisit and to make plans, and in a few years to make them again, to see it again and see if it is going on, it is going well. Do we have to change anything? So we have the opportunity to know better every time we close the circle. In 5-6 years, we see again what we are doing, and if we can do something better. And we have the opportunity also to use the MPAs that are close to the shore to protect the shore. For example, if you have the seagrass in good health, it will protect the shore. It is a natural barrier for the storms and the high waves, and it will help us. It is not only infrastructure, man-made infrastructure. This green infrastructure we have to take on board. So it is the solutions based in nature, and it is something we have to explore every day.
Sure. I don't want to lose the opportunity to give the floor to you if there is any comment or questions,
Please.
reflections. Victor?
So some of you have mentioned several times participation as an important issue, and my question to you is, in your opinion, which are the key points to improve social participation, to involve stakeholders in this MPA's management, and can improve also the good status of the areas?
That's a difficult one.
But I should do the question the opposite, because in fact
you are the coordinator.
You are the
right?
expert in participation. No, we have from the ministry we make a huge effort, and this participation, people are driving us completely crazy with all the workshops and they bring
50 workshops.
How many?
50
participation
workshops
in 2 years we have.
Yeah.
So, but it is something that we fully need. We need the people that live close to these MPAs, who live there or who live from there, fishermen in the place, or traffic shipping lines, or tourists, or scuba divers, or people that only enjoy it. They have to get involved. They know their place. They know what is in there. They are the ones who know better. So from Madrid, we are far away from the shoreline. We need those people involved. How to do it? with a huge effort. we have to go there. We have to explain it. We have to reach the kids, the young people. They have to get involved. We are now at the moment in the Intermares project, that is the big project we have at the moment in Spain. We are making an effort to capacitate, to give education. I don't know. Can we educate the defense? I don't know. Okay. We try to give awareness to our colleagues from the Defense Department, from the the SPRONA is how do you say it in English? Yeah, the surveillance, all of them, but also we try to reach every single part, the fishermen, the schools. The idea is that at the end of the project, 1 in 10 in the Spanish people will know what this is. What was the objective?
That day that when we were drafting the project, Victor was not very. He was a little bit drunk and said, "Okay, we will sensibilize at least 1%, 10% of the Spanish population
should be aware of what this is and should be involved in 8 years." That is the objective. Yeah.
No, I would like to provide experience from Chile, from two particular processes. One was the creation of Nazca Desventuradas in 2015, one of the large Latin American MPAs, 300,000 square kilometers. It was not difficult in the sense that no one is living there. Okay, but it was an important part of a fleet, national fleet operating there. So working with fishermen, regardless if it's large-scale industry or artisanal, is very difficult, as you mentioned. But if you work with them and you really engage in good faith, I mean, at the end of the day, they want the same that the government, they want to protect, but they want to carry on operating maybe in a more small area. So at the end of the day, the important thing is that they need to be in the table in real terms. On the contrary, in the Easter Island MPA was completely different situation. Not only because it was a population there, but it was an indigenous population, very connected to the ocean. And there is no receipt in the sense that you need to, it was no experience before. So it was, of course, much longer process and was important engagement from more than fishery or environment or foreign affairs, in this case, authorities. It was all the government working together and plus applying international regulation such as ILO. So it was a consultation, but the consultation is the final part. So if you want to be successful, you need to work really with in very good terms with fishermen, with the community. And as I said, Easter Island, Isla de Pascua, is Rapa Nui people. They really care about the ocean. And now, which is the result? The MPA is created, but there is a co-management. It means there is an ocean council that is integrated by the state, by institution, but also from community, different sectors, and they are working now in the management plan. So it's really a good experience, such a unique, and of course I think it will be successfully implemented because, as you mentioned, the main actors that will be working daily basis in the APNC, from scuba diving to fishermen, are working together, and the issues that they face, they find the answers for that.
About stakeholders, I think it's not just a matter of bringing them in the process, but how to bring them in the process. It's not just asking them what they want or what are their feelings. Is that in order to take decisions about that, we need to understand their interactions. And if we are talking about stakeholders, then we are talking about economy, we are talking about sociology, we are talking about culture. So we need to bring social scientists in the process in order to manage the interaction of stakeholders with marine protected areas. It's not just a matter of asking people what they think about how they interact with the marine protected areas. It's also a matter of analyzing their interaction in terms of fisheries. How how much money they get from fishing, how that is transferred to the society around the fishing harbors. If this is not the same if a fish is sold to a big market in Madrid or is just sold to a restaurant where it may have a much better value in the process. So all that process is interacting with marine protected areas and with marine management in general. So bringing in social scientists, I think, is a big challenge for the future and something that is increasingly, but we need to do much better in that.
Sure. The clock is unfortunately ticking, so thank you very much for sharing with us all your ideas and suggestions. There are many issues on the table, and just as a last comment, I'm reading all the time that word ambition, ambition, ambition. So we have many things on the table, and as the Cholitas Boliviana says, it may be difficult, but it's not impossible. So I think we all together can really, really get there. So thank you very much. Thank you very much for being here with us.